Alright, hello everyone. My name is Wesley, this is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a recipe that came out over on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago, Friday last week, which is for a crispy garlic noodle, which somebody requested it over somewhere. Somebody requested it somewhere, I don't remember where. So I took a shot at it. But as you might imagine, a garlic noodle is a pretty loosely interpreted concept because it appears in many different foods, in many different forms, in many different cuisines, which means that if we're going to make a garlic noodle, we could pretty much do whatever we want with it. As far as I'm concerned, a garlic noodle is just a noodle dish that contains garlic, and you can put really whatever you want in it. So we're going to take a shot at that. Today what we're going to do is we're going to fry up some thin egg noodles, which is one of my favorite ways of getting a very crispy garlic noodle. Because essentially what we're going to do, unlike what you would do in most like Italian pastas and even most like chow meins and like most Chinese noodle dishes, is we're going to skip the boil on the pasta entirely. So we're not going to boil it at all. And instead what we're going to do is we're going to fry it. We're going to take it raw and then drop it right into the wok fry. And that's going to get us this really crisp noodle. And then the other thing that we're going to do is essentially, so this is essentially what we were doing when I was building out the recipe over on YouTube, is taking some inspiration from an Italian pasta, which is called pasta Aglio Olio, which is essentially a pasta dish that is slow cooking garlic. So we're going to take some, you would in that case, take some garlic and some olive oil, like a lot of olive oil, usually about like a cup of olive oil, and then slow cook it for about like 5-10 minutes on really low heat, and that's all of the aromatic qualities from that garlic. So we're going to do something pretty similar today with our version today, and kind of take a look at what that looks like if you try and reproduce that in a wok cook, which is very interesting because most people wouldn't try slow cooking in a wok cook. So floor height, yeah, great question. Yeah, noodles, the noodles would in this case pretty much have to be handmade. You can't really do this with dry noodles because I don't even know what would happen if you tried to fry raw dried noodles. So with the noodles that we're going to be working with today are going to be fresh handmade noodles. This comes from, if you're here in Chinatown, this Hop, which is on 7 and Webster, something like that, which is a really great noodle shop that does handmade noodles for really cheap too. I think that whole bag was like $2, which is really great. If you can't find fresh Chinese egg noodles though, you could do it with, you could probably even make your own noodles and do it with that. Or you could do it with Italian handmade noodles. That would also work too. But it does have to be handmade, otherwise the fresh, like dry fettuccine or something is probably not going to cut it. Good question, yeah. So, as you might imagine, to kick things off, what I'm doing here is I'm peeling our garlic. You'll notice, if you've watched these streams before, that I never peel the garlic. I never go through this step. Because normally what we would do in this case, when we do wok fries, is we would be crushing the garlic. So when you crush the garlic, what happens is the first thing that happens is, first off, it releases all of its allicin, which is why it's so important to crush your garlic. which is because the allicin is where all the flavor from your garlic lives. The second thing that happens is also very, very useful when you crush your garlic, is the skin pops off. It makes it a lot easier to deal with the skin of your garlic. What we're going to do today is, instead of crushing it, what we're going to do is really, really thinly sliced pieces of garlic, which is not like mandatory in a pasta aglio olio, but very commonly found. I like to do it in this particular case because I find that the garlic pops out a little bit more because it has a little bit more physical presence. The downside to that approach to garlic noodles is that when you do that with garlic noodles, you have to use a lot more garlic in order for it to work. Because you're not crushing it. So since you're not crushing it, the allicin is not releasing as much. And since you're not releasing as much allicin, you have to use a lot more garlic in order to achieve the same quality of aromatic flavor from your garlic. So normally what you generally would see when we are at this step is you would probably see me crushing and mincing about like 4 cloves of garlic, maybe even 3 cloves if we're doing like garlic cloves that are this big, which is a really large clove of garlic. Today what I'm doing, this is actually an entire head of garlic, which is a whole crap load of garlic, which you have to do because we're working with, we're going to be slicing it instead of crushing it, so that's going to be really, really important. Yeah. Yeah, cheap. Yeah. I'm really stoked to be able to find fresh handmade noodles here in Chinatown. What's also really useful is Yurenhop, it actually provides fresh handmade noodles to all of the grocery stores in Chinatown too, which is really useful because Yurenhop closes really early. They close, I think, at like 2:30 or something. Like, so basically, they close when their noodles sell out, and their noodles sell out generally whenever the restaurants finish buying them up, which is usually like right after lunch. So if you're like me and you forget to go, what's really useful is that they also sell all of their noodles to like every grocery store in the Chinatown area, so you could get their noodles basically anywhere in Oakland, Chinatown, and you'll find them, which is nice because I forget to go early a lot. So, but if you live here in Chinatown, definitely recommend going to Yurenhop. All right, so starting things off, I'm going for pretty thin slices with our garlic today. You'll notice, can you see that on the camera? Yeah, you can kind of see it, that our garlic is starting to sprout. So that's essentially what's happening right here. You see that little green bit in the middle. Very often, when I see that happen and we're crushing the garlic, you'll probably see me pick that little sprout out. It's not the end of the world if you end up eating it. It's not going to like kill you or anything. It might give you a little bit of indigestion. I don't feel like picking it out today, mostly because I'm not crushing the garlic, so it would be really, really annoying to try to get it out. That's not, again, not the end of the world. All it means is that the garlic has started to like grow more garlic, basically. The only thing that I look for when I'm working with garlic, in case that it's bad, is if it's mushy or if it has like weird spots on it. So if it has like turned black or brown, which sometimes you might not notice until you've actually peeled the thing, that's probably a sign that you should throw that garlic out. But otherwise, it's probably going to be fine. Yeah. So I'm giving this, we're going for as thin slices as we possibly can. I'm not going to be super cautious about chopping this stuff super, super thinly. I know that in a lot of like the pasta aglio olio recipes that you'll see them chopping this stuff super, super thinly. I'm not going to do that because I don't care, and I'm not that particular about how thin this stuff gets. What's most important is that you're going to want to use a lot more garlic than you would normally use if you were doing a recipe that involved crushed garlic. So in a recipe that was using crushed garlic, you can release that allicin a lot easier by crushing it. Since we're not crushing it, we have to use a lot more garlic, which is basically a whole head's worth of garlic. Yeah. Dad. That's the first. Hello everyone. Cool. Alright, so that's our garlic. We're going to set this aside, and then what's going to happen is we're going to add this to our oil at a very, very low and slow temperature. So we're going to drop this in. It's still going to go into a wok, but we're going to drop it into our wok at like medium-low heat. And in the original recipe that we had written, the one that's on YouTube, I had done it in a mix of, that was using sesame oil, and I think it was a mix of sesame oil and peanut oil. There are two really great aromatic oils that will bloom out nicely. The main reason that I involved that peanut oil is because I didn't have enough sesame oil. to be honest. Today I forgot to buy sesame oil, and I don't have peanut oil either. So what I'm actually going to do today is we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it in olive oil, which I don't actually know how that's going to go. Not necessarily something that I would recommend doing, but if you're reproducing it yourself, I would say definitely use that sesame oil. It's going to taste better, I think. But we're going to try it. We'll find out what happens. I think it's going to be fine. Yan Can Cook, yes. Yan Can Cook is the namesake for this series. Martin Yan, I used to watch his show. For those who are not familiar, Martin Yan is still alive, by the way. Lots of people think that he's dead, which is funny. Martin Yan is not dead. He's still alive doing cool shit. And he's the namesake for the series, which is a series that he used to host called Yan Can Cook on PBS in the 90s. I'm pretty sure that show's discontinued, though. All right, next up, here's our ginger. We're going to do the same thing that we normally would be doing with our ginger, which is essentially fine mincing. So I'm going for slices down the center here, one down the middle, and here's our. At this point, you could call that, I guess, a dice. And then for our fine mince, we're going to run our knife through it. Like so. Cool, yeah, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. It's always fun to talk to people about it. I was doing this series. By the way, I think we recently hit the 1-year mark of these live streams. I think we started doing them like February or so. I think we've been live streaming every week for the last year, which is crazy. All right, so here's our ginger. If you're really committed, you could probably go a little bit finer with that ginger. I'm feeling kind of lazy today, so I'm not going to bother. But there's your ginger. It's, by the way, when you're wok frying, not the end of the world if you don't get a really, really good fine mince on your ginger. Because once it goes into the wok, that stuff's going to fall apart anyway. So if you get lazy and you maybe don't do a really, really great fine mince, it's probably going to be fine. Alicia, yeah, how's it going? Thanks for catching the stream. All right, next up here is our green onions. We're going to chop off those root ends. And then what we're going to do here, so a lot of times eyeball this. Lots of people ask me, like, how do you tell where the greens of your green onions end? What I usually do is I eyeball it. Where I'm really looking for is where it starts separating. So when it starts like splitting into more green onion, that's what we're looking for there. Really, although it's not the end of the world if you don't do a great job of finding where the greens of your green onions start. So, kicking things off, that's the whites of our green onions. We're going to slice those up fairly. That on a bias for no real reason. You don't need to chop these on a bias. I'm not really sure why I did that. Then these greens, we're going to use these for a garnish. In the original recipe that I had done, this was the only green aspect of the whole dish. Because essentially what we were trying to do is create a nice pantry-friendly recipe, which is where the inspiration from that recipe came from. In our version today, I actually went ahead and bought some bok choy because I felt like eating some bok choy, which means that we don't have to rely on these greens as much. In fact, you could probably just skip it if you don't have green onions. But if you do have your green onions, what I'm doing is I'm slicing these up relatively thinly, also on a bias, and these are going to be used as our finishing garnish. There are also, by the way, some whites in those green onions still. Also not the end of the world. Yeah. Do you get more flavor out of fine mincing the ginger? Yes and no. It's not nearly as important as crushing the garlic. Mostly what most people will worry about is if you don't do a really good fine mince, you will have to worry about like the ginger popping out in the wok fry, and that like in your finished dish you'll get like weird large chunks of ginger floating around, which I find is more of a problem when you're not frying the ginger. So it happens a lot with like a bibimbap. Well, Did I use ginger? I can't remember if I used ginger in bibimbaps. But with certain stir fries where the ginger is not actually used in the stir fry, it's just put into the sauce and then it basically goes into the finished dish raw. That's going to be a little bit more of a problem because you're going to have these big chunks of ginger that also have not been cooked, which means that you're basically biting into a large chunk of raw ginger. So that's going to be really abrasive and maybe not so good. Yeah. All right, next up, so we're going a little bit off book today if you are following the original recipe. These veggies, they did not exist in the original recipe that I had done. What we're going to do is we're going to chop up, this is going to be half of a sweet white onion, and then we're going to use some baby bok choy in our version today. If this is totally optional, if you want to keep it super pantry friendly, you can skip this step, but I actually find that this is going to be a nice little addition. So we're going for large dice on our onions here today, so that's our onion. And then next up, here's our baby bok choy. We haven't used baby bok choy in a little while. I remember the last time I used it in a recipe, actually. For those who are unfamiliar with bok choy, anytime that you see me using bok choy, you'll probably see me using baby bok choy, which looks on camera especially very similar to regular bok choy, but I guess you can kind of tell the scale from my hands. But baby bok choy, it's about half the size of full-grown bok choy. Which, other than the size, the main thing that you'll notice about it is that it is also a lot less bitter and a very different color. So full-grown bok choy, it's more of a light green. You could kind of think of it, I think the reason that what Chinese people think of it as is more the color of like jade, so like very, very light green jade. Whereas baby bok choy, it's almost white, which is, you can't really see it on the camera. I think the camera contrast is helping out a lot. But yeah, the white area of your bok choy right here is going to be a little bit lighter, and it's also going to be a lot more tender and a lot less bitter, which is the reason why I end up using baby bok choy more than full-grown bok choy most of the time. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Thank you. Cool. Yeah. Happy 1 year. Hello. Oh, you watch. Yeah. You watch it when you get home. That's what I think lots of people do. So, everybody's back at work, so you're not wasting time watching shit on the internet. That's what I'm doing, at least. Thank you, though. All right, so here's our baby bok choy. I'm going to give this a quick rinse. Chinatown veggies especially, but not pretty much any produce, honestly. But especially Chinatown veggies, wash that stuff. You don't have to use soap, but at least give it a rinse. Mostly because, especially with Chinatown veggies, they're like sitting out on the street, which means people are like touching it and stuff, and it's pretty gross. You don't want to go and just eat that stuff raw. So I give this a good rinse. I use a fruit wash with my veggies because that's really gross. Chinatown veggies are really gross and dirty. But other than that, that's all we're really going to do, just chopping it in half. Let's do our braising sauce next. Actually, we need 2 of these. All right, last up, we're going to assemble 2 different items here. The first up is going to be our braising liquid, or our sauce element, which is basically going to be where all of the richer umami qualities are going to come from. What we want to do today is most of the qualities of heat, or most of the qualities of savory heat and flavor are going to come from our garlic and our oils from that long cook. So we're going to keep it pretty simple and go very easy on what's going into this today. That was just 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, and this is 1 tablespoon of dark soy sauce. 2 tablespoons, excuse me, of rice vinegar. And finally, 2 tablespoons of lao gan ma. If you're not familiar with lao gan ma, by the way, lao gan ma is the maker of this stuff, which you'll see in Chinatown. It will be labeled like spicy chili crisp or something like that. It's made by a company called lao gan ma, which is referring to the old grandma on the label. Get this glare off there, I guess. What we're looking for when I use this stuff, what I'm looking for is the one that's labeled spicy chili crisp, mostly because, well, I think it's like sort of their flagship one. Is their spicy chili crisp. They have a whole bunch of different other stuff that you could get, all of which are good, and I use lots of them. But I think the reason that I default to this one is it's also because it's the one that we use in our food pop-up, because it's the only one that they make that does not contain peanut. And the only reason that I do that is so that for peanut allergies, which is, I'm not allergic to peanuts, but when we're making food for other people, that's generally a big concern. So the one with peanut is very tasty, and it's essentially just made with peanut oil, and it has little chunks of peanut in it, which is nice. All right, so that's our last element. We're going to add that at the wok fry at the very, very end. Oh yeah. The last thing that I just realized that I'm not actually going to do today. In the original recipe that I had put together, we were doing a combination of that with sesame oil and peanut oil. So it was like, I think it was a half and half blend, so a quarter cup each of sesame oil and peanut oil. I actually forgot to buy peanut oil, or I forgot to buy peanut oil and sesame oil. So what we're going to do today is we're going to substitute that with, this is just some extra virgin olive oil. I don't know how well that's going to work. We'll have to find out. What I think is going to happen is it's going to be just fine, because olive oil is also very good for slow cooking, but it's going to be a different kind of aromatic flavor, which might work, might be kind of confusing. We'll see. Good alternative to the chili paste, yeah. If you can't find it, or if you can't use it, it also contains MSG, by the way, so if you're allergic to MSG, you probably don't want to use that. If you can't find it, just plain old red chili flake, that's going to work really great. Or you could even make it yourself. All that Lao Gan La chili crisp oil is just, it's oil and chili crisps, so like red chili crisps that have been slow cooked for a super long time. So you could throw it in a pot with some oil. I do it with peanut oil. You could do it with canola oil or any kind of neutral oil, and then just throw a whole bunch of pepper in it and let that slow cook for like a long time, like I think like an hour. And that will bring out all of those aromatic qualities. It's very nice. Or if you can't find it, just use chili flake. All right. But yeah, last up, what we're gonna do here. So this is fresh. So these are fresh egg noodles. I see them referred to as all kinds of different things. So in some cases, I've seen them referred to as like Hong Kong noodles. I don't know what would make them Hong Kong about them. They are not exclusively from Hong Kong. In some cases, I've seen them referred to as Singapore thin noodles. I honestly don't care and don't know what the difference is between why they would be labeled by location. What's most important here, so especially these ones are really fresh. I got them from the market today. So they're already kind of coming apart, which is nice. So you see how they're like sort of flopping around. That's very nice. If they're a little bit older or if they're stale, they'll start like clumping up. So what I like to do, this is not as important with what we're doing right now because these are so fresh, but what I like to do is separate them. So like pull them apart and make sure that they're not sticking together before they go into the wok fry. That's going to be super important because if they're sticking together, then you're going to get like, it's not going to come apart when it fries. So after it starts frying, then you're going to get like this, like basically a cooked block of like noodle, which is not going to be good. So pull those noodles apart before you start cooking. But if they're really fresh, if you do a good job, remember to go to the grocery store on time, go early in the morning, they'll start pulling apart really nicely. By the way, if you are looking for these in Chinatown, you've got to get there early because they make these stuff only for the amount of time that they're available during the day. So basically when they sell out, then they sell out and they close the store. So that means that like if you're trying to get them, you have to beat restaurants to get before they get them all, which is usually like all of the restaurants in Chinatown. They're probably getting their noodles from the same place. So if you want to get them, you got to get there before the restaurants get there, which is usually around like 10, 11 o'clock, sometimes even earlier. So it also means that you probably have to buy them the day of, otherwise you're probably not going to get your hands on these. Are they top ramen noodles? No, good question. No, they're not top ramen noodles. They do kind of look like top ramen noodles. These are fresh thin egg noodles. So I've seen them labeled as all kinds of things. When I find them in the grocery store, I think they're labeled as like Singapore thin noodles. But honestly, like just because they're labeled Singapore thin noodles does not mean that they're from Singapore. They're probably used in Singapore, but other than that, I don't really know why they're called that. What we're really looking for is that they're made out of egg and that they're thin. So this really, really thin quality to it. Is it hard to make them? That is a good question. You could probably make it pretty easily if you have a pasta extruder. I probably would not try. I probably would not try and make them without a pasta extruder. I think like that's going to be the real difference maker if you're trying to make these things yourself. But otherwise, though, if you are trying to reproduce this without getting your hands on them, I honestly think that you could use any kind of fresh noodle. So go to like the Italian grocery stores. You could probably find a fresh pasta that's going to work just fine. Just find anything that's made out of egg and that's super thin. I would bet if you could find like a fresh angel hair, that would work the same. What's important is that you probably can't do like dry angel hair or dry spaghetti, any of those dry noodles. Cool. So I just got my wok. We're gonna get that thing heated up. That usually takes like 10, maybe 30, 40 seconds. Once that thing starts smoking, we're gonna start frying up our noodles next. Yeah. All right. Hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST. We've been missing a lot of Thursday streams lately, and I also won't be here Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. But usually Tuesday and Thursdays at 6:30 PST. Most of the time on Tuesdays, we're cooking through a recipe that has come out over on the YouTube channel, which is out every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with a recipe for this crispy garlic noodle that we're cooking through right now. So if you're interested in stuff like that, all of those recipes, they live over on the YouTube channel, which if you're watching on Reddit is the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel you're already on. Good job. Ooh, yeah. Oh yeah, the white miso curry is one of my favorites. It's also like one of the earliest recipes that we've done, and also like so I like ended up revamping it and like redid it using white miso curry. And I think one of the times that I started making it, I've been doing it with doenjang, which is like a Chinese version of miso paste. But yeah, Matt, that's a really good one. Let me know how it goes. Also, I've never used a vacuum box to marinate chicken. That sounds really interesting. Paul, yeah, supermarkets across the country or across the world use random names for all kinds of Chinese noodles. I see the same thing for like chow fun or not chow fun, but like chow mein noodles, which again I also don't really know what to call them because I just call them Chinese handmade noodles. But I see them name all kinds of names across the board for whatever like noodle that this is. Usually in Chinese you would see it referred to as mein. But honestly, in the grocery store, just look for like what is it made out of and what's the shape of the noodle. Those are the two more important things. All right, so first up, I'm gonna add here into our wok now that it's ripping hot. This is gonna be a little bit more than a quarter cup of oil. We want a good amount of oil here today. And then what we're gonna do is this is gonna happen in 4 different batches here so that we don't undercook our noodles. This is our first batch going in, and then what we're going to do, just like we would do if we were searing like chicken or steak, we're going to let that sear for 2 minutes, probably a little bit less than 2 minutes actually, and that's going to give us this nice crispy edge to our noodles. A couple of things are going to happen in those 2 minutes. The first thing that's going to happen is that bottom side is going to start browning, and you're going to get this nice crispy quality to it. But the other thing that's going to start happening is that the noodles are going to start picking up a lot of volume because they're going to start which means that they're going to start holding a lot of shape, which is going to be nice. Yeah, I think this is going to happen in faster than 2 minutes. Yep, definitely faster than 2 minutes. That might have been because the wok is a lot hotter than it normally is, but that was 45 seconds that we just did that. So. Yeah, the overhead fan. I notice a difference when I don't turn it on. But I think what helps a lot more is opening the windows. And definitely all of the smoke detectors are pulled out. So that's like the first thing that I do before I cook basically anything these days. Not even just like wok frying, but pretty much anything that I cook. The first thing that I do is open up all the windows and also pull out all of the smoke detector batteries because those things are just going to start beeping incessantly. So that's our first batch. I'm going to repeat that with the remaining 3 bundles of noodles here. I think it's probably mostly because the noodles are a lot fresher, so they're pulled apart a lot more. But when the first couple, I've done this 4 times now. The first couple of times that I did this, usually it takes about 2 minutes to crisp up. But I was also not working with noodles that were this fresh. Ice, good username. Canola oil, yeah, so what we're using today is, today I'm using peanut oil. Sorry, that's not peanut oil. We're using grapeseed oil today. Normally, most of the time when I'm wok frying, I'm probably using peanut oil. Today I'm using grapeseed oil just because I forgot to buy peanut oil. But you could honestly do this with any kind of high heat oil that you have will work. So canola oil would work just fine. You could also use vegetable oil. Grapeseed oil is my favorite. But really anything that has a nice neutral quality to it. So we use canola oil in all of the food pop-ups. That works just fine. It's also the cheapest oil that you could find. So it's also the reason why we use canola oil. But today I'm using just grapeseed oil. Oh, vacuum sealed Tupperware. That sounds really interesting. I have to look into that. I'm not sure if I could justify buying a vacuum sealer though. I don't know what I would use it for, if I use it that often. Restaurants that have this on their menu in the East Bay. That is a good question. I think Shandong has this on their menu in Oakland. Don't quote me on that. I have to double check. I think Shandong and also maybe Shooting Star have it on their menu. Particular version is probably going to be a little bit tough to track down because it's involving a bunch of things that you normally would not see in Chinese food. So a big part of what we're doing right now is drawing a lot of inspiration from how a pasta aglio olio is cooked, which is an Italian pasta. So we're going to do our garlic in a low and slow method, which is not something that you'll generally see in a lot of wok cooking. But the crispy quality about the noodles that we're doing right now, that's something that you'll commonly find in a lot of Chinese noodles. The peanut oil is collapsing, yeah. Yeah, peanut oil pretty easy to find in Chinatown. I honestly, because I forgot a bunch of times, and I always have grapeseed oil on hand, and also peanut oil is a little bit more expensive than grapeseed oil. And I honestly, it hasn't been like bugging me that much to not have peanut oil, so I'm kind of okay with it. If you notice your noodles, they start burning like this. That's not like super burnt, but that is burnt enough where it's a little bit annoying. It probably means that there's not enough oil. That's usually the sign that you need more oil going on. Oh, for fishing trips, that's probably a good idea. Yeah. Cool. How long? Oh yeah, how long would it take to cook if I wasn't talking? Yeah, that's a good question. Good question. I'm glad that you brought it up because usually the things that I cook on stream, they take a lot less time when I'm not streaming because I get distracted a lot and like talk to you guys too much. For a dish like this, probably only about 20 minutes to cook through. We're probably going to take close to an hour to cook through it, mostly because I'm like not paying attention a lot and like looking at the chat and too much and stuff. But yeah, a dish like this, it's intentionally designed to be pretty quick to cook through. So the noodles, they only take about like, this part should only take like 5 minutes. I think it's probably closer to 10 minutes. And then everything else, it should happen pretty quickly. Yeah. Good question, though. Yeah, I'm glad that somebody brought that up. A lot of the things, by the way, a lot of the things that I cook on stream, they take, the streams themselves, they take like an hour. But that doesn't mean that it's going to take you an hour to cook through them. That just means that I'm getting distracted and talking too much. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, restaurants that have this on the menu, you could probably find a good, I have to look into it. I'm pretty sure that you can get a pretty decent garlic noodle at Shooting Star in Chinatown. If you can't get it there, they definitely have some form of crispy noodle. I don't know if it's a crispy garlic noodle though. All right. This is about 4 people. It's just for me right now. But yeah, it would serve probably about 2 to 3. It kind of depends. What I always say, it depends how hungry you are. So when I eat it, probably would serve 2 people. That's because I'm really hungry and I eat a lot. But probably for a normal human, probably like 3 people would serve about. This is a pound of noodles, so you can take a look. This is a whole pound of noodle. Here's what it looks like when you finish cooking it. Kinda can't see. I guess you can sort of see what's going on. But they puffed up quite a bit, so there's like a lot more volume. So this is standing almost like 6 inches tall. Earlier they were standing like an inch tall. And that's because there's a whole bunch of volume that has come together from our noodles during that fry, which is really lovely. It's basically filling up this whole bowl, which is nice. All right. So let's head back over to the wok. Over on the wok, I've killed the heat, so this is going to cool down. Woks, by the way, because they're so thin, you'll notice there's no heavy bottom to it, which means that once you kill that heat, this thing is going to cool down really quickly. So this is probably pretty soon. I'm not going to do that though, because I don't want to burn my hand. But basically what I'm doing is I'm waiting for the wok to cool down a little bit so that we can low and slow cook our garlic. So I'm going to get the fire going, and this is not something that you'll see me doing on a wok very often. But I'm turning the fire down to about like a medium-low heat. Very, very important, especially if you're using olive oil like we're doing today. That fire has got to be really, really low. If you do anything higher than a medium-low heat with olive oil, a couple of really terrible things are going to happen. The first and most terrible thing that's going to happen is that it's going to start sputtering a lot, which is not great. The other thing, some people say that it's not going to sputter. I think it's going to sputter. The other, also maybe more terrible thing that's going to happen is that it's going to burn the olive oil. So you're going to get a burnt flavor from your olive oil, which is not great. We don't want that to happen. So very, very important at this point with your olive oil, low and slow. So medium-low heat. Here's a half cup. In the original I was using, that was using peanut oil and sesame oil. I'm going to add a little bit of extra oil there. I think I actually did that in the original recipe too, now that I look back. And then we got our garlic. Here it is. And you'll notice, unlike everything else that we do in our wok, there's no sizzle, nothing's like aggressively smoking or anything like that, which we would normally hear when we wok fry. The reason that it's not sizzling today is because it's very, very low temperature, which is nice. So what's going to happen is we're going to let that go for about like 5 minutes. And over the course of those 5 minutes, a couple of things are going to happen. First thing is that the garlic is very slowly going to start browning, which is going to be real nice. And essentially how we're going to get crispy garlic flakes. And the other real nice thing that's going to happen is that all of the flavor from our garlic, all of that aromatic quality, is going to start imparting into the oil itself, so that when we drop that oil back into the wok fry later on with our noodles, then we get this nice aromatic quality to it. Ideally, if we were using that peanut oil and sesame oil, we would have nice complementary flavors. I think the olive oil is going to work just fine, but yeah. Have I ever had an oil fire all the time? Yeah. I don't think I've had an oil fire inside. But in our food pop-up, we get oil fires all the time. And to the point, like, I think what's most important about an oil fire is that, first, I think the most important thing is that you know what to do. So don't throw water on an oil fire. Obviously, that's Should be common knowledge. If it's not common knowledge, if you have an oil fire, never throw water on an oil fire, because it's just going to set the water on fire, and then you're going to have, or it's not going to set the water on fire, but it's going to splash the hot oil everywhere, and it's going to spread the oil fire. So never throw water on it. The other thing that you have to know to do is smother it. So don't throw water on it, but smother it, and also have a fire extinguisher handy. But we have on at least like 4 or 5 occasions started oil fires, and it's scary because it looks scary because there's oil on fire. But as long as you know what to do, just don't panic. That's the most important part. Don't panic, and then be calm about how you react to it. That's going to be most important. But yeah, we have started a number of oil fires, and it's never fun. Yeah, but super careful. Usually when that happens for us in the pop-ups, what's happening is that the woks have gotten too hot, which I did not realize could happen until I started cooking in wok burners. And that usually happens if like you leave the wok burner on and it just like sits on an idling wok. Eventually that wok is going to get really, really hot, and what will happen if that wok is too hot is we'll add oil to the wok, and it sets the oil on fire pretty much instantaneously, just from hitting the wok, because the oil is too cold and the wok is too hot, and that combination starts the oil fire. That's usually what's happening when we start oil fires, and it's like you just stay calm, know what to do, have a cover for your wok that's very useful to cover it, and then you can cut off the oxygen supply to the oil, and it will go out on its own. Yeah. Oh no, the mic is breaking up. Let me reset the YouTube mic. Yeah, part of it could be that the mic is breaking up, but part of it is that the YouTube mic needs to be replaced, honestly. It's getting old. This is the same mic that we had when we started the live stream, so that's probably it. It's a cheap mic that needs to be replaced. I think that's the reality of it. Yeah, are we making chow mein? Sort of. Chow mein is a weird and loosely defined term. I guess technically no, we're not making chow mein because the noodles that we're working with are not chow mein noodles. I think by definition, chow mein has to be made with lo mein, which are those large, wide, thick noodles, or not like super wide, but like wide enough. Probably like most similar to like spaghetti, where they're wide and round. What we're using today are thin egg noodles, which are more commonly made or used in like a lot of like Singapore wok fries, like Singapore noodle stir fry. You see them in a lot of Chinese food. I think like I more commonly see it referred to as like fried egg noodles or something like that. The English translation of a lot of Chinese dishes are really confusing, and also like no like actual regulation to how we translate that stuff. So yeah, but no, I think technically we're not making chow mein. What we're making today is a recipe that came up over on the YouTube channel a couple of days ago for a crispy garlic noodle. Somebody requested that I take a shot at it. I kind of took some liberties with, because you could really go wherever you want with a garlic noodle. You could do whatever you want with it. What I thought of when somebody asked me to do a garlic noodle, a recipe for a garlic noodle, is a pasta aglio olio, which is an Italian dish that's essentially involving like slow-cooked olive oil, garlic in olive oil, and tossed in some spaghetti, and then tossed in with some like finely minced parsley. Which we kind of left out the whole parsley element. The original version involved swapping out that parsley for green onions, but it didn't work, so I scratched that whole idea. But essentially what I'm doing is taking that concept of slow cooking garlic, and then we're going to do the same thing but in a Chinese noodle dish with some crispy thin noodles. So what we're doing now, this is actually olive oil. And I think it looks like it's doing okay. What's most important when you're working with olive oil is you got to keep that heat real low. If it gets too hot, then the oil is going to start burning. And you could definitely smell and you can definitely taste it when olive oil starts burning. It's never good. Same thing with like burnt butter, also never good. Which means that anytime that you're working with those like low heat oils and fats, you want to make sure that your fire stays real low. Yeah, food saver vat. Oh yeah, for marinating, that's probably super useful. That might be really useful because I do buy meats in like large quantities. Yeah, maybe that might be a good investment. Christmas. There you go. All right, this is almost there. We're at, that's about like 60-70% through. Well, you definitely can't see it on YouTube. You could kind of see it on Reddit. And YouTube is blowing out. But parts of the garlic is like starting to brown here, so we see like a couple of cloves here and there are starting to turn like a deeper garlic shade, like light brown color. What I'm really using though at this point is using my nose, and I'm starting to smell. When we start smelling that garlic becoming nice and fragrant, that's going to be really useful. What's really important though is that we don't want to cook this all the way through. So we want to reach about like 85% cooked, or like basically 85% of the way until that garlic is brown. So just shy of when you want it to be done, and then pull it off of the heat. So very, very important at this point is that you've got to remember to account for carryover cook, because as soon as we pull this out of the fire, normally with most things, you pull it out of the fire and it basically stops cooking because the fire has stopped cooking the thing. In our case today, that's about there. In our case today, this is absolutely continue to cook when we pull it out of the fire because the oil is still going to retain its heat for some time. So in this case, what we want to do is pull it out about 80-85% cooked through, and then let the residual heat of that oil kind of finish cooking everything. So I'm pulling this out, and you'll notice it is even continuing to cook. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to let the residual heat finish cooking this garlic. So that's good. Going to be a lot more brown the next time that we circle back to it. All right. Next up, I'm rinsing out my wok. This is particularly important today because we've got olive oil in the wok. So I'm going to start doing some high heat stuff, which means that we want to get that olive oil out of the wok because otherwise it's going to start burning. So I give that a good rinse, and then I'm going to throw that back on the fire and let the rest of that water burn off. You could also use a towel too if you want. Yeah, chow mein is kind of a, so this like, first of all, definitely not a Chinese thing. Mein is the word for noodles in Mandarin, but chow I think is just an Americanized term that uses loosely to define like Chinese noodles. But word mein is in Chinese translates to noodles. Also seen it used spelled in various different ways, and at this point I have no idea how to spell the word main in pinyin in Chinese. I've seen it spelled M-A-I-N or M-I-A-N. I've also seen it spelled M-I-E-N. Some people think that it's related to like Mandarin versus Cantonese. I don't think it's related to Mandarin versus Cantonese. I think it's just like people getting confused and spelling it different ways, and then now it's just a thing that exists. So I don't know. Cool. All right, so I've got my wok back on the heat here, and a couple of things. First thing that what we're looking for here is that all of that water has burnt. So there's a little bit of residual oil. That's just fine. But very important. Sometimes I skip rinsing out the wok because I'm lazy. With our case today, we want to make sure that that wok gets nice and dry before we start pulling it out. Before we start adding more stuff to it, because there's a whole bunch of residual olive oil in it, and we don't want to let that olive oil hang around. All right, next up, I'm going to turn this down, probably closer to like medium heat. It's smoking a little bit more than my liking. And this is going to be a handful of Sichuan peppercorn into our dry wok, very important. We're going to give our Sichuan peppercorn a little bit of a dry toast here. We're at like medium high heat right now. And this again is kind of optional. You don't have to do this with your Sichuan peppercorn. But essentially what's happening is when we dry toast spices like this, it's blooming out a lot of the aromatics from the spices. So also very important, and probably we should turn this on too, is open up your windows when you start doing this, because you're blooming out a lot of the capsaicin from the spices. So you can do a similar thing. I do the same thing with things like coriander or nutmeg. Also very useful to dry toast it before you crush it up, because it's blooming out more of their flavor and quality to it. But if you're lazy, I skip this step a lot. You can just grind it up. You could even throw it into a pepper mill and just grind it straight through a pepper mill. It's like when I'm real lazy. All right. So there's our dried peppercorns. This is in a now a mortar and pestle. What we're going to do is crush this up. Now we have these nice, very, very aromatic Sichuan peppercorns. This might be too much Sichuan. Sichuan peppercorn, by the way, is the flavor that you probably associate with like most Sichuan food. So it's the thing that we like iconically refer to when we talk about like these spicy Sichuan flavors. So it's the quality. Lots of people think of Sichuan food as like having a numbing quality. So it's so spicy that it makes your mouth numb. That always is coming from the Sichuan peppercorn. And it's honestly in most of the dishes that I make that are Sichuan. It probably has some form of Sichuan peppercorn. It's also, by the way, when we're reproducing things from like Panda Express or PF Chang's, it's the thing that I substitute out a lot. So lots and lots of times I'll see dishes that use red pepper flake, which is not a thing in Chinese food. I don't think I've ever used red pepper flake in an actual Chinese dish, but I see it in a lot of the Americanized Chinese dishes. And I think the reason for that is because they're trying to substitute out this Sichuan peppercorn, which they probably are doing because they're worried that it's going to be too aggressive for the like American palate. Cool. So that's our peppercorn. Last thing that we're going to dry toast here, oops, that's the wrong way, is our Tianjin peppers. If you can't find Tianjin peppers, just dried peppers, you could substitute them with any number of dried peppers. Today we're using these are actual dried Tianjins, but I have also done it with like dried japonesa peppers, which come from Mexican cuisine. You could, if you go to a Mexican market, you can find a very, very wide variety of dried peppers, just like you can find in most Chinese markets. So honestly, anything that has a dry pepper to it, it's going to work great. This is probably, though, the thing that you'll iconically see in a lot of Chinese food is the Tianjin pepper. So just like with our Sichuan peppercorns, I'm tossing this in a dry wok. And then we're going to let that bloom for, that'll probably take about a minute. And that's going to bring out a lot of the spicy heat from our Tianjins. This also, by the way, Tianjin peppers are not edible. They're just dry peppers. What's going to happen is we're going to get a whole bunch of nice aromatic flavor from the Tianjins. And then we're going to toss it in our wok fry for that aromatic quality. But after that, you could honestly pull it out or just leave it in if you want. But it kind of reminds me of like how we use it. Has a nice aromatic quality and the leaves behind. But it's not edible though, so if you want, you could pick it out. Most restaurants I see that use Tianjins, they leave it in because it looks really pretty. But if it's like served on the platter, you're not really getting anything out of it. So I see a lot of like spicy fried chicken is served on a bed of like fried Tianjin peppers, but even though they were probably cooked in those spicy peppers, you're not getting any. It's not going to do anything, which is funny. Probably looks really pretty though. That's probably why they're doing it. It made your back teeth tingle. That's crazy. Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you use enough Tianjin peppers, it will make your whole mouth tingle. All right, that's funny. Yeah, cool. That's super funny. So these Tianjins, they probably look mostly the same, a little bit more blackened, but they are, you can't smell them, but they smell really tasty. I can smell them already, which is going to be real nice when we toss it into our wok fry. So for the most part, they look the same, maybe picked up a little bit of color, but they smell a lot more fragrant than they did a minute ago. All right, last up, we're gonna go for our wok fry here. So this is 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, grapeseed oil. Keep forgetting that we're not cooking with grapeseed. All right. Then finally, here's our aromatics. So that's our ginger and the whites of our green onions. Then I'm gonna let that bloom for about 15 seconds or so. We're gonna wait for that to be nice and fragrant. So again, use your nose at this point. Then here's our bok choy going in. Once again, if you're following the original recipe, this bok choy was not in the original recipe. And if you're trying to keep it pantry friendly, you can absolutely skip the bok choy. But I think it's going to be nice. The bok choy, by the way, we're going to lose a whole bunch of volume once that starts frying, because just like with lettuce or spinach, it's going to start shedding out its water, and then we're going to get a lot less volume. So it looks like too much bok choy right now. It might be too much bok choy, but it's actually not quite as much bok choy as we thought initially. All right, here's our onions going in. Normally I would give our vegetables, basically everything other than onions, a little bit more head start because I like to go real brief on the onions. Today we're actually going to go pretty brief with our bok choy too, so we're basically adding these in at the same time. All right. Pumpkin spice Nuka-Cola. That is a weird username. Am I gonna eat one? I will definitely eat one. I'm gonna wait for it to be cooked though. But yeah, baby bok choy, you can absolutely eat baby bok choy raw. There's nothing wrong with eating raw baby bok choy. Honestly, probably tastes pretty similar. It probably just has a little bit more bite to it. I would not eat full-grown bok choy raw though. Full-grown bok choy is really, really bitter. And then like the only thing that makes, I really dislike full-grown bok choy if you haven't figured out by now. But the only thing that makes a full-grown bok choy like relatively palatable is the fact that it's cooked. And then once it's cooked, you're cooking a little bit of that rawness. So I kind of think of it, it's kind of similar to like a green bell pepper. Nobody likes green bell pepper. The only reason that you're eating a green bell pepper is because it looks pretty. It's like nice next to other red things or orange things. But nobody actually likes green bell pepper. And the only thing that makes green bell pepper like palatable is because it's been cooked. So you're cooking off a little bit of that rawness. It's still really bitter though, and it's still disgusting, which is basically, to me, that's what full-grown bok choy is. If you're gonna eat bok choy, just eat baby bok choy. It tastes better. Alright, so I'm giving this is about 2 minutes in the wok fry here. We're basically just trying to cook off a little bit of this volume. It's a little bit more voluminous than I'd like. Right. There's our Tianjins going in, followed next by our egg noodles. Somebody asked about this on the YouTube channel. Look like that the egg noodles are a little bit more puffed up and probably should be cooked in batches. If you can manage it, I like to avoid cooking these things in batches if I possibly can. It does mean that you're probably going to make a little bit of a mess. But what's most important is that you're not going to really be too worried about heat retention, because at this point we're not like trying to hold heat in the wok anymore, because the wok, we're done cooking at this point. Not really any cooking happening anymore. So at this point we're not going to like lose heat, so it's not a big deal if you start overfilling the wok at this point. It does mean that you might make a mess, so stuff might start pouring over the sides and stuff. That might be a little bit annoying, but I've learned to live with it. You just have to clean your stove more. That was our oil, garlic and oil going in, by the way. And finally, here's our sauce element. Once that sauce element, by the way, once the oil and the sauce get in the wok, you're going to start losing a little bit of volume on those noodles, which is going to help sort of like make less of a mess, at least. Green bell pepper is charred green bell pepper. Yeah, I think it's like an acquired taste, I guess. I know it's like a big thing in a lot of cuisines. I know that green bell pepper is definitely a thing in like, it's definitely a thing in like New Orleans cuisine and like Louisiana cuisine. I just can't stand it. I think it's terrible. All right, here's our peppercorn. To each their own though. Here's our Sichuan peppercorn. I'm not gonna add all this. This looks like too much Sichuan peppercorn to me. I'm passing this through a sieve, by the way. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. It's mostly for presentation. All of the Sichuan peppercorn is edible. But if you don't want the flowers of your Sichuan peppercorn to get into your wok fry, it's nice to add it through a sieve. Kind of like keeps things from like dropping the flower petals of the Sichuan, which are a little bit chewy. That's basically the part that gets stuck in your teeth, are the petals. So it's nice for presentation. It's also nice for like your bite, but I have definitely left stuff in before and it's fine. All right. Last thing that we want to do anytime that we're cooking in carbon steel, I like to give that wok a nice rinse, and that's going to get everything out for us. While it's hot, we have this nice non-stick surface, so I like to do is clean that wok while it's hot. Don't let it cool down with stuff in it, otherwise stuff is going to stick to it. There are certain pans that I do that with, definitely things that like Teflon. You don't want to clean a Teflon pan while it's hot because you'll crack the Teflon. I also do the similar thing with like stainless steel. I don't like cleaning stainless steel when it's hot, but with carbon steel like this, definitely let it give it a clean while it's hot. That's going to be nice for you. This might need the scrubbing. Looks like I burnt something in this wok. All right. It's 3:30 a.m. Wow, man. Yeah, probably not the right time to be hungry. My bad. Green bell peppers, though, yeah, I guess charred green bell peppers. I'm gonna be on a quest to find a version of green bell pepper that I actually enjoy, because I hate them so much. All right. At this point, by the way, if you want, you can absolutely start picking those Tianjin peppers out. They are not doing much for you anymore. I like to leave them in because I think that they're nice and pretty. But if you don't care about that, definitely pick them out. So there's our garlic, by the way, which you'll notice has reached a nice dark browned and crispy color. The last time that we checked on it a couple of maybe 10-15 minutes ago, it was closer to like a light brown color. And that residual heat has like done the remainder of our cook for us, which is nice. So again, reminder that anytime that you're cooking, slow cooking, especially anytime that you're cooking olive oil, you want to account for that carryover cook, otherwise you're going to overcook your garlics and stuff. If you're a fan of green bell peppers. The bell peppers belong under your fajita meat, and yeah. I just always like, anytime that I eat a bell pepper, it's probably like a version of bell pepper that I enjoy more. So it's probably either a red bell pepper, a green bell pepper, or a yellow bell pepper. Just because they have like a little bit more sweetness and like, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, that's funny. Very divisive topic. Charred green bell pepper stuffed with couscous. Yeah, see, that sounds tasty, but it sounds like it would be better with a red or an orange bell pepper. Yeah, charred green bell pepper with couscous and some cheese. Yeah, I just feel like that would taste better with a ripened bell pepper. Yeah, I understand that this is a divisive topic, though. All right. I'm probably gonna buy a green bell pepper this weekend and try this, though. I haven't cooked with couscous in a long time on that. Couscous is a tricky one. I feel like couscous can overcook really quickly. I imagine that it cooks in the oven. No, I think about that. Don't work with couscous a lot. Oh, I almost forgot. Here's our garnish. This is the green onions. In the original version that we did, there was no other element. It was just the Tianjin peppers, so the garnish was a lot more important because these bell peppers or these bok choy wasn't there, which is like really important for presentation. But honestly, I think we could have done without the bell pepper or the green onions. Yeah, So that's yeah. Can I say, by the way, so a green bell pepper or all bell peppers, they're exactly the same. They come from the same bell pepper tree, so there's no like orange bell pepper tree or red bell pepper tree. The difference is when they're picked. So like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but a red bell pepper is the most ripened. Orange bell pepper is the next, and then yellow is the next, or it might be the other way around. And then green bell pepper is essentially an unripened bell pepper, which is why they're so bitter. So that's why, like, as far as I can tell, an orange bell pepper is the sweetest one, and then red is the next, and then yellow is next. I can't remember. Somebody will look this up. Yeah. But yeah, so a green bell pepper, anytime that you're eating a green bell pepper, it's basically an unripened bell pepper, which is what makes them so bitter. Yeah, good night. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Can I turn the music up? Nobody ever asked to turn the music up, but I can absolutely turn the music up. We're going to spin some music later too, and you'll be able to hear. All of the tracks that you're listening to, I don't really know what you're listening to under the voiceover, because I can't hear it. But all the tracks, they have, most of them are remixes. So they all have, usually are tracked with like a remix of a voiceover. Yeah. Yeah, Paul, I agree. I don't know what he means by the heat of me. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we'll spin some tunes too, and then we can listen to the tunes too. Thanks everyone for tuning in, by the way. My name is Wesley. This is Whooole Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday we came out with a recipe for this crispy noodle, which was a request from somebody. I forget which subreddit it came out on. Might have been on YouTube, or maybe it was on gifrecipes. I forget. But somebody requested, I should probably look it up so I can send them the recipe. Somebody requested this garlic noodle dish, and I kind of took some liberty with it and adjusted it for a couple of different things. I actually did this recipe 4 times, I think 3 or 4 different times. And at some point I kind of lost sight of what I was originally doing. But the original concept for it was part of a fusions series that we've been doing, where I've been adapting like a lot of things that come from other food cultures and seeing what they look like in a wok fry. So this is coming from a technique that you use in a pasta dish, or an Italian pasta dish called pasta Aglio Olio, which is essentially a finely sliced garlic that's been slow cooked in olive oil. And then tossed in some spaghetti, and that's basically the entire dish, plus some parsley, lemon, and a red pepper flake are the 3 big ones, and you basically slow cook all of that, and then you get this nice aromatic pasta. The original version that I had done, it used garlic in the slow cook, and I think was also slow cooking some green onions. And then over the course of the 3 times that I did this recipe, I messed it up a bunch, and then edited out a bunch of the stuff that wasn't working, which is basically all of the things that you do in a pasta aglio olio. Probably because it just is not intended for the way that we're trying to cook it. But yeah, if you're looking for that stuff, it's all part of this whole series that we've been doing, where we've been reproducing a lot of food, or been creating a lot of things that are inspired by foods that come from other cultural food cuisines. So this is coming from a lot of Italian food cuisine. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. Those are out every Friday. So last Friday was this recipe. The Friday before that we did a xiaobing, which is a Chinese like street food. I think it comes from Hong Kong street food, and it's essentially like a yeasted batter bread that's wrapped around an egg. I did it with an egg. That was the last week's recipe. And I don't remember what came out before that. At some point we did a lapchang carbonara. That was my favorite one in this fusion recipe series, which is basically an Italian pasta carbonara cooked with lapchang, which is a Chinese sausage. A whole bunch of other stuff coming out soon. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube, check out what's going on over there. We're live streaming every Friday, or live streaming every Tuesday and Thursday with those recipes coming out every Friday. So, and we're also working our way up to 6,000 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and give it a subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. Who's there? Yeah, how's it going? Yeah, hello to everyone just tuning in too. Need some haggis, yeah. Oh, yeah, Matt, yeah, I think, well, I don't think Paul's there anymore, but Matt, I think I just realized that Matt was serious. Fajitas are cooked on top of like a bed of bell peppers. That was not a euphemism. You're literally talking about the bell peppers that sit underneath your fajitas. It's funny. All right. Cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back on. Well, we won't be streaming this Thursday because it's Thanksgiving and I'm gonna be eating dinner with my family. But we'll be back on. Let's see. Next Tuesday. Oh yeah, next Tuesday. So this Friday coming up, we're going to be doing a stinky mapo tofu, which is probably confusing to some people because what is stinky tofu and what is mapo tofu? And I'm going to explain that in that whole recipe video. It's essentially a stinky tofu. Stinky tofu comes from a Chinese Cantonese street cuisine. I forget. Chinese street food, and it's usually done fried. It's like a fermented and very, very pungent tofu, which is very interesting that I've never actually seen it used in a dish before. Usually you eat it like a snack. And then we did that in the mapo tofu, which is really, really tasty. Speaking of Sichuan peppercorn. That's coming out Friday, which means that Tuesday next week we're going to be live streaming that and cooking through it live, which will be very interesting. Probably have to do the tofu prior. Cool. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. That's Hamcharo, by the way. Hamcharo is the hamster that eats ramen. He only gets to eat ramen. He, she, they, gender neutral hamster. Only gets to eat ramen when you subscribe. So please feed Hamcharo. He's very hungry. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I still got dreams, but more like a took it of my 20s, and it's You're as sweet as strawberry wine. Your bed warm, glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
It's time to give a little to the kids in the middle, but oh